What is up, everyone? Today, boom, The Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. Book 4 in the Books of Babel series, which I have raved about. If you've been around this channel for a while, you would know that. I didn't love the first book. I liked it as a friend, but then the second and the third book really won me over. And man, the fourth book, also amazing. And overall, I'd recommend this series. Review over. No, just kidding. So the first few minutes or so will have no spoilers for any of the books, really. So, and things will be timestamped, and I'll give warnings, etc., etc. So, Fall of Babel brought back a lot of the things that I liked in the first book, where there were questions, and not necessarily answered questions, not even necessarily explored questions, but just various topic conversation starters about what a society should be or strive to be or look like. And it was related to the world through the ringdoms. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, this world takes place in a tower, and there are different levels to the tower, and every level has their own system of government, and they have their own exports, they have their own economy. And there's trade, obviously, but things can be very different from ringdom to ringdom. And so different, in fact, that the first book, it felt like different episodes. It felt like I was reading 3 short stories about Thomas Senlin instead of one full story. But then the second and third book, it felt more like a gelled together story. There was more of a cast of characters that we got to know and love. Senlin might be my least favorite character of the main characters. That might be an unpopular opinion, but I like Senlin, and I like his character development, but the first half of the first book, I didn't like him as much. So yeah, basically, I thought this took the good themes from the first book, but it had better characters. It felt like a better story plot line and everything. I also thought this book tied everything together super well. I've not really read any reviews or watched any reviews for this book, but a lot of people say the ending they are conflicted about in some way or another, and I just don't agree. I really liked the ending. I thought it was very well done in terms of answering the questions about the tower, things like, why is the tower here? What is the purpose of the tower? Who built the tower? Oh, we know who built the tower? Well, why did they build the tower in the way that they built the tower, and what runs the tower? I felt like I got a lot of answers to my questions about the world, but I do recognize that some of the answers about the world were pretty unexpected, probably to the vast majority of the readers of this book. So just be prepared, strap in, and, enjoy the journey. So now I'm going to get into spoilers for the first 3 books of the series. So let's talk about the end of book 3, where we were, and what I thought coming into this story. Well, we've got Marat. He's clearly a con man. We know what the Hot King is. And it's interesting because I remember in my Arm of the Sphinx review that I was pretty sure right away that Marat was kind of a con man, a fake populist, if you will, giving lip service to the plight of the Hods without actually substantively improving the Hods' lives in any way. But, he was a talented fake populist, so he got supporters, he was acquiring these paintings, and he just has some power assembled, and Senlin is now one of his top advisors. The lawful good rogue himself, Thomas Senlin, whispering in the ears of the clown fascist Marat. And when Marat was introduced in Arm of the Sphinx, that's when I thought this series started to get a lot better, because we had a more clear antagonist to look at. He wasn't like the clear antagonist right away, but he developed more clearly into someone who not only was a problem for Senlin, but a problem for society at large in the whole tower. He was incredibly power hungry, and yeah, like I said, he's a clown fascist. And I've wondered this about other books, and I definitely wonder this about Marat specifically in this book. With the rise of there being more commonly powerful people who are fascist or borderline fascist and just very incompetent at their jobs, but also good kind of PR people in the real world. I do wonder if that's influencing some of the villains we see in fantasy, because there was a scene where, well, I won't give it away, but, basically Marat becomes more and more clown fash. Also, where's Adam? What happened to Adam? That was a question that was simply not answered at all whatsoever in the third book, which is okay. Adam's not anyone's favorite character, but I do like him and his motivations. He definitely does bad things, and he's a thorn in the side of Senlin and Edith and everyone. But he's like part of the same kind of oppressed working class as all of them, and like Valletta as well, obviously. They are looking out for themselves in a cruel, cruel world that incentivizes and almost forces you to look out for yourself. And Adam as well, having to look out for his sister. Well, the first part of this book answers a lot of these Adam questions, and he gets put into a situation where a lot of the things that were a problem in his life, things like, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Like, will I eat anything for dinner? Will I have housing? Is my sister getting abused? Are there like labor violations going on? Like all these things. A lot of those things just aren't problems anymore. And Adam can kind of like develop, and I love it for him as a character. And it allows him to kind of be his own person and not be the person who's so caught up in just trying to do basic things to survive and not starve to death and, make a living for himself, feed his family, the things we all aspire to do, right? Those things aren't a problem for him. And it's not only Adam that there's very few problems for. There's a lot of people that there's very few problems for around Adam. And it's definitely an interesting ringdom, because you can't put your finger on the problem right away. But as time goes on, even a seemingly utopian society where no one has to worry about food or shelter or, paying the bills or anything, even in that society, there still can be problems. And how are those problems solved? Well, that's an interesting question that I will let you guys find out on your own. Okay, now let's talk about the ending. If you don't want any spoilers for this, go away. Thank you for watching, and subscribe or whatever. So, in fantasy books, and just literature more broadly, I guess, there are sometimes answers to societal questions. There are sometimes liberal answers, which are where, like, the good versus evil a lot of times has like a liberal ending. Like, think about Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's the Fire Nation, and they're brutal, and they're territorially expansionist, and they're gone, boom, and we beat them, and then Zuko's in charge, right? Harry Potter, you could also say, has kind of a liberal ending. It's like Voldemort, boom, gone, and nothing really fundamentally changes. But then you have endings that are maybe a little bit more leftist politically, or they involve dismantling some of the systems that exist that are in place. And usually in those endings, the entire text is kind of criticizing society more broadly. And first of all, it's like, what is the problem? And then second, how do we change the system to make the problem not a problem? Not put the right person in place to make the problem not a problem. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that super well. But this book kind of had it both ways as much as humanly possible, right? Because you had the system, right? You have the Sphinx in this series, and she's the Sphinx. She tries to like govern everything, and she does her best, and but a lot of things fall through the cracks, and there's plenty of, downtrodden people within many of the ringdoms that she is watching over, and she just doesn't have time to get to or fix everything, and the system itself isn't good enough to take care of all of people's needs. But then we have Edith, and Edith is groomed to be the next Sphinx. So it did kind of seem for a lot of this book like it would be a liberal ending, which, but judging by the rest of the series, I was a little bit surprised by. I mean, not super surprised by, but there was a lot of societal critiques. So I felt like those might go by the wayside if the ending is just like, and then Edith was in charge, not that Edith's a bad person or would do a bad job or whatever. I quite like Edith, but I don't think any human being could step into this position of the Sphinx and fix everything, or even come close, quite frankly, to fixing everything. But then you have the spaceship, and so also I just have to shout out my friend Kate, the almost book doctor. She knew about the spaceship before this book came out. She's like, oh yeah, then there's going to be a spaceship. And that was her theory, and she was right. And, there's a lot of questions. Where's the spaceship going? And like, what are they doing and whatnot? So you had two endings, right? You had the ending in the tower with Edith, and then you had the spaceship ending. And, yeah, the spaceship ending was definitely more of a kind of socialist ending in terms of having a major change to the system that exists in that particular ringdom that became the spaceship, and opening their society up to immigrants, basically, and basically making sure everyone on the spaceship's material needs are taken care of. It is so clear in terms of how taken care of people are. There's the scene with Senlin talking to one of his students at the end, where Senlin tells the fable, which is very interesting, and I love that. But right before that, the student is like, I have a lever that gives me pudding whenever I want it in my house. And his argument was like, why do I need to learn anything if I have that lever? And Senlin was like, well, you have to know how the lever works and all this stuff. But he also said, of course you deserve a lever in your room that gives you pudding whenever you want. And that's the level of material just awesomeness that they live in. Like, they're in a utopia. They are. I mean, I guess it kind of depends where the spaceship is going. Maybe they're like, gonna fly into a black hole. Maybe it's not necessarily a utopia. But from what I could tell, yes, it is a pretty awesome place to live. Also, let's talk about the fable. So the fable is just amazing. I love the message. You have a man with a magical chest that grants him whatever he wants. And so he uses it to grow his wealth, redirects rivers to properly irrigate his fields. He changes the wind to help his windmills. He does all this stuff. And then his son, he tries to farm, but land that was good farmland he can't really buy because the rivers changed, and his boats don't sail the right way because the wind changed directions, and it's harder to sail than it used to be. And so this man's son is struggling, and the son, I mean, he can live on daddy's wealth. It's okay to fail if your parents are billionaires or whatever, millionaires, whatever. But the father is dying. He might die. Very tragic indeed. But it's okay. The father has a magical chest. So he goes to the chest, he opens the chest and asks for another 40 years of life. And he opens the chest. And his son drops dead on the ground. Boom. Now, I can't think of a better allegory for climate change and the degradation of the planet through various ways, whether it be through extracting oil endlessly, whether it be through pillaging natural resources endlessly. I mean, and basically, life isn't all about living in such a way so that you have endless consolidation of power and money, and that stuff's not gonna make you happy. Obviously, you need enough to survive and live in be able to buy books, for instance. That's great. But I mean, why do you need like $50 million? Why does anyone need that? Why does anyone need $50 billion? And is having that much money, like, what are the side effects to society? If they're the only ones who can farm, they can jack up the prices of food. If they're the only ones who have enough wind to sail their boats, they're the only ones who can trade, and they have a monopoly. And yeah, basically what I'm saying is, monopolies are like magic chess, because, you can sell your products for whatever you want, and open your magic chest, and there's just a ton of money there. So yeah, I mean, that story is definitely more of a socialist ending rather than a liberal ending. But I do want to mention socialism a little bit more. Sorry, bear with me, everyone. There is a quote in the middle of the book. Well, Marat is still at large and blah, 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 Senlin. And Senlin, I believe, is recounting people saying, well, there's two types of people in the world. And then he kind of always chuckles at that statement. And his point is, there's not two people in the world, just like there isn't two types of fish in the sea, or, two types of plants. But in terms of Marat and everyone else, basically his point was there's everyone else and then there's Marat. And it's the socialism versus barbarism dichotomy that, people talk about, where it's, you've got the anti-slavery movement, and then you've got like the pro-slavery movement throughout history. There's multiple iterations of this. There's in 1930s Germany, there were alliances between socialists, social democrats, liberals, like basically everyone against the evils in that country. So yeah, those are kind of like the quotes that stood out to me. And yeah, I'm happy Valletta's alive. I hope she's okay. Oh my God. It was a roller coaster with her, in terms of, I mean, she was alive, but like, how actually alive is she? But yeah, I love this series. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, read this series. It's great. I loved the ending, but as you could tell, I was focusing on maybe some things that other people weren't focusing on. Probably, I don't know. I definitely have like weird takeaways from books, or not necessarily weird, but certainly unique. Yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble, because I feel like I've been going on for a while. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys next time.